Welcome to the Connection Central Industry Podcast, where real conversations meet real strategies. Each episode we dive into the industries that keep Australia moving, talking with the leaders, innovators, and everyday operators, shaping what's next. So settle in, turn it up, and let's get into it.
Good afternoon, everybody. Michelle O'Hara here from Connection Central. I'm very lucky on our industry podcast today to have Steve Ford from Goodwork HR. Welcome, Steve.
Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Good. So good to see you. It's been a while.
It has, yes.
So, Steve, my goodness, with everything that is going on right now, I have no doubt that your department is the most busiest. You've turned 10, congratulations, and I'm
Thank you.
sure a lot has changed in those 10 years. What I would love for you to start with is you talk about HR as a department, and I'd like you to just explain a little bit about what that means and how you got to where you got to right now.
Okay. So I guess there's a whole bunch of stuff that we do. We're a full service HR provider and provider of those outsourced elements of HR for businesses that don't necessarily need a team of full timers or anything like that. So our target market is really small and medium sized businesses, and there's a lot of professional services and industries that require really great people and culture infrastructure, but they're not necessarily the size where they need a full-blown department or the expense of a full-blown department. So essentially, a majority of what we spend our time doing is working on an ongoing basis with businesses as that HR department as a service. So sort of on the basis of what they need, very much tailored to what their requirements are and what their strategic priorities are, and whether they're chasing opportunities or trying to fix problems. Amongst our team, we will sort of create sub teams for each client and be that HR department. I always say our goal is to sort of get quite embedded within those businesses, to get invited to their Christmas parties, to snag a free beer. And that's essentially how we've grown over the 10 years. So you get this a lot with HR. We are all inherently people pleasers. So one of our big priorities is always just around that fixation on delivering to a really high quality, being a really in that trusted inner circle for clients and being sort of regarded as part of their team. And probably the output of that, we've been very fortunate to have a lot of client retention and just sort of progressively built upon that over the decade. And yeah, there's a few businesses we've worked with across the entire 10 years, but yeah, quite a few that have been for multiple years on end, and we've sort of grown with them. So yes, that's sort of the aspect of providing that department as an outsourced service, but quite embedded and really in the thick of it, whether things are going well or not.
That's brilliant. I think as the economy shapes up as it is right now, it's probably the perfect model because people can sort of check in, check out as they need. How do people know what they need?
They absolutely do not know what they need. So, and look, I say not just in HR, but a lot of these types of services. Sometimes even if you're in the industry, you need a fresh set of eyes to come and look at your business independently. And you will find a lot of plumbers with leaky taps, across all industries. So, I mean, we will often, before we start working with a business ongoing, we will come in and do a bit of a discovery process, and that gets pretty in depth. It's the compliance stuff, it's the cultural stuff, it's the systems you've got in place, it's talking to staff, it's doing surveys, and you really do need to go digging pretty extensively and side by side get a feel for the owners or leaders of the business and what their goals are for that business, where they're trying to take it. So you basically build out a bit of a map of where they are, where they're trying to go, and then a whole bunch of strategic and operational objectives to sort of bridge that gap.
Gold, beautiful. So how are you? I always found, like from a marketing perspective, as soon as the economy got tough, etc., that marketing, HR, and training were the first things to go. I don't know if you find the same. With the economy and everything, it's a little bit bizarre. However, people are still the most important commodity. Just share with our audience a little bit about the trends you're seeing, what sort of work you all are doing. Just, yeah, that sort of
Mhm.
thing.
Look, when COVID hit, I actually was worried about what that would do to our business because everything just got put on hold and there was this mass freeze and essentially everyone was holding onto their purse strings quite tight. It ended up being the busiest time that we had ever had because we were having to navigate the logistics and things like JobKeeper and all those sorts of elements, but also probably the emotional and cultural sides of workplaces full of very human emotions that were um, sort of being stretched to their extremities and having to help teams navigate really uncertain times. So even now, I mean, with what's going on globally, the volatility globally, when that starts to peak, no matter what the reason is, if there's a big election in the States or, even whispers of fuel shortages or things like that, you do actually see people's nerves get a little bit shot within workplaces. So a lot of our work does sort of go down almost that the team dynamic, sort of helping people navigate the uncertainty and the emotion. They're worried about their own job, their own existence, the prospects of the business that it's still growing, all those sorts of things. So we do find that the troubleshooting probably steps up a little bit when things get a little bit more frayed. And even, I don't know if I'd call it volatility, but uncertainty around things like the onset of AI and every podcaster saying, like, will there be any jobs left in 3 years' time? There is just these natural sources of angst sort of permeating in just about every workplace. And, um, it's hard to go a day without seeing an article about industries being replaced by technology. And um, so basically everyone's on edge for a couple of reasons, and that takes a lot of just sort of keeping environments measured and making sure that people's frayed nerves aren't turning into conflict or panic or just highly emotional responses to mundane situations. So it's been a big couple of years.
That sounds all a bit scary, actually. So, do you find that you're getting called in to help the leaders navigate, or the team, or a bit of everything? Like, how does that normally work? Because that's a lot, actually, to take on. Yeah.
It is, and even in perfectly healthy cultures, you do see that there's the ebbs and flows. But look, depending on the situations, sometimes it is going in and directly dealing with the teams themselves. We will always sort of advocate for being a little bit proactive and going, how do we develop leaders so that they are able to help their teams navigate those situations? Because even when you get um, out of the rough times and you want to grow your business, that's when you'll go, are our leaders able to lead through the good times and sort of take us towards that growth? So you don't want to take backward steps and start almost diminishing the impact of leaders in businesses. That leadership development piece is really critical. So we'll often get quite involved in that context as well.
Nice. I'm finding with a lot of the podcasts lately that the successful businesses really do understand that leadership piece, and they're really starting to invest in their, I guess, they're developing up their teams from within because there aren't a lot of external people to choose from. What I'm curious about is the different generations, like, and the different, millennials versus the different age groups, etc. Are you finding that it's different sort of HR training, or with the different age groups?
Enormously. So
That's
we get asked every week around how to manage them millennials, and it's obviously like there are generational differences, and past generations were probably very much around safety and security and building a really linear career path, and the incoming generations, which are now like a majority of the workforce statistically, I think. They're very much around career purpose and what am I working towards, and um, essentially what will I have achieved by the time I'm on my deathbed. Like they are thinking big picture. So for leaders, it's not just that level of just security and clarity, but it's also around the career development and the purpose. And yes, I'm asking you to do the hard yards and take some of the more menial tasks, but how does that actually connect to your career goals and all those sorts of things? So it, it's not necessarily an indictment on any generation, but you will see the different patterns and you've got to lead to them. It's really important.
Good goodness, mix all that in with compliance. And is there any time for leaders to actually do the job they're supposed to be doing?
Middle managers are so stretched right now. And I mean, we run a lot of leadership development programs. And myself personally, I run quite a few sessions and we will always have a dedicated topic, but I will always leave space in those sessions just for a bit of chit chat and reflection amongst the leaders. And because it is literally a room where I'm sort of saying to them, laptops shut, phones away, it's actually really fun. I find that work really rewarding because in those moments where you're just giving them time to talk, you'll have talked through some more general leadership themes, but they'll start to permeate back into their business and what's happening in the business. And they'll start to think of some really great strategic things that they need to put a little bit more of their attention to. But it's just finding that time to stop without distraction for 5 minutes, which is really quite rare at the moment. It's we're all asking so much of ourselves.
That is so true. Not enough hours in the day, but it's good. It's like working, stopping to work on the business, right? Instead of in it, a bit like the business owners. So I
Absolutely.
was at, yeah, I was at a luncheon just recently with Anthony Ryan from Beta, and he was talking about productivity levels, and he was saying at the moment, particularly in the construction industry, that productivity sits about 2.6, and if we were just to raise that to 5, that we would pretty much double the workforce because, of course, we're quite short in the workforce. And I think there was quite a silence in the room about that. However, I know you talk about high performing teams, that they're very doable, and you talk about that it's not easy, but there's a simple formula around it. So I'm really keen for you to share that with the audience about how you make that happen. That's magic
Uh,
stuff.
yeah, I mean, and I guess the main thing is it's not magic because it's like saying that I can get fit through magic, and you can't. It's actually more about the consistency and doing the right things, not all the things. So I will always say that when it comes to sort of culture and performance in general, um, it's not easy, but it's simple. And probably the main mistake that we see now is that people are overcomplicating it. And the truth is, when you're talking about strategy with people initiatives and all those sorts of things, it's probably the same with marketing. People go, I can hop onto GPT and literally ask it for a strategy that'll do this, achieve this, and work to this time frame. And what we'll often find is that people are overcomplicating it and then don't know how to implement it. And that's probably the biggest trends that we see. But in essence, it's just like the slowing down to speed up stuff and just going, what are the most meaningful questions we should be asking? So in terms of what is our business actually trying to achieve? Like what is our vision and um, whether that's 10 years, sort of funneling back to 5 years, 3 years over the next quarter. Um, what are we trying to achieve? What direction are we trying to take? What are the things that are distractions and what are the things that are progress? Um, it's sort of knowing your values, and I am I carry on about this so much, but
No, me too.
a lot of businesses have values, and they're garbage and they don't mean anything, and they've been picked out of a barrel, and it's honesty, integrity, and three others, and they don't mean anything, and nobody knows how to live them. So it's essentially, what are we trying to achieve? How are we going to achieve them? And then you've got a lot more clarity around, okay, what's the resourcing we need in terms of our structure, the specific roles within that structure, so role clarity, goal clarity, and then how do those roles get executed in a really consistent manner, putting like some really nice time and attention and consistency around processes and systems and all those sorts of things. And again, not getting distracted by trying to add in all the fluffy showstoppers like beanbags and ping pong tables and pinball machines and all those sorts of things. Because if you haven't put some rigor around the work and how the work is done, and there's still daily frustrations around that stuff, the
Yeah,
positives don't actually, there's no return on investment on them. So I always say you remove frustration first and then you can go and have some fun. I will play on any ping pong table I can get my hands on, but you've got to remove the frustrations first. So and then from there, it's then just around communication rhythms. So your meeting cadence as a group, individually, all those sorts of things. And then how all that gets done really well going back to my previous point, is just around that really strong leadership capability, which again isn't hard to develop. It just takes real intention. So it's basically just clarity down from organization, values and culture, roles and goals, process, and then the communication, which sort of makes that clarity happen. Again, it's it's simple, but it takes discipline and rhythms and making sure that everyone's bought in and that we're not skipping every second team meeting because we're too busy. Like that's when you form bad habits and you fall away from that discipline.
That, Steve. It's so simple. Yes, I understand now what you mean. Yes. No, but like you say, it's a rigor, and isn't it? And it's a discipline and a focus on. And once it's in place, it's a bit like when you create processes and systems. It takes time to create them, but once they're there, they make save you so much time. So it really is about businesses prioritizing this because it is one of the most important things to prioritize.
And I will always refer to it as an operating system. It's just like this, like without this cog, the rest of the cogs won't work
Don't
well, right?
work.
So you got to put them together. And this is why simplicity is so important because the more you shove in there, like the more diminished the positive impact will be. So you get the basics right and you develop that really great collective discipline and to the point where it's just good habits and you don't have to crack the whip to make people do the right thing every day. It just becomes so habitual. You can start to add in other stuff after that, but if you try and sidestep the basics, it's not going to work.
It's just gold. And I agree with you completely on the values. I remember when I used to be in corporate and they used to be up on the wall, what a load of garbage. Um, but very much so. It's interesting because everybody who's on our podcast have all actually been invited because they've aligned with our values, which is really interesting. So
Mm.
everybody is the same, saying the same thing that they do realize how important their people are, and it's about the behaviors of the values, not just having words. So that makes a lot of sense. But what's your take then on perks? Like companies, do you think with the whole wages and all those sort of issues, do you think that companies need perks, or is it enough to have great values, look after your people, pay them like good wages? But yeah, what's your take on that? I'm just interested to know.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is to get beyond the level of frustration with remuneration, and because that is something that if you haven't done will always have a detrimental effect on your business. After that, when you're talking about rewarding people, and this is a really common mistake I've spoken about many times, is that we make the mistake of assuming how people want to be recognized and rewarded. So you can put five different people in front of me, and there's a very good chance that they're going to have fairly different motivators. And I mean, we actually use a profiling tool. It's called motivational maps, and it basically it breaks it down to nine key motivators, which I always describe as like it's a deck of cards in your brain for whatever reason. It can be nature, it can be nurture, it can be recent experience. Um, but for whatever reason, these motivators, the cards at the front of that deck are pointing people towards being motivated or demotivated in a situation. So some people flat out want to be rewarded financially, and that's great. They know what they want. Cool. Some people just want the flexibility. Some people there is true value and it fills their bucket if they get that recognition. And it can be out loud recognition or it can be really discreet recognition, which is a pat on the back or an email. Some introverts don't want to be called out in front of a group. Um, the mistake that leaders make is trying to discreetly figure out what people are motivated by, as opposed to just sitting down with them in one-on-ones and going, here's a bunch of things that human beings are motivated by, rank them from 1 to 9 because I want to know what's important to you. And then when you do amazing work, I'm going to try and fulfill those motivators. And again, for the five people, it could be five different motivators. But if you think about what you're trying to achieve is to keep the energy up and keep them engaged, you'd be mad to just try and go with a one size fits all um, a strategy for all people. So again, it doesn't need to be too complicated, but just a little bit of tailoring can just like increase the effectiveness of it by 500%.
So simple. Is how many companies that you go into would do that? Would have like those motivators and have asked their people that question?
Oh, I mean, before we start dealing with them,
Yeah.
like
No.
probably less than 5%. No, and I mean it's
It's
like
interesting.
yeah, and I mean it's just because we, everyone's so busy. We don't think about all of these micro strategies that can be really effective, and you do need an expert to come in and go, I'll tell you what works. It's this. Just like anyone would need from marketing or finance or anything like that. Basically it's just a cheat sheet. But I mean, we've embedded that process in so many places, and it just never fails. Even being asked the question, "What is important to you?" is a really meaningful gesture to the employee because it shows that their employer gives a damn and
Yeah.
is trying to work with them to make the experience the most it can be for them.
Do you think I'm sort of a bit blown away because it is so simple, and everybody should just be doing this, but you're right, it takes somebody. Well, you all are living and breathing it every day, so but it takes a company like yours and your team to come in and just be able to see that very easily, and just with those simple processes and systems that you put in place can make such a massive difference to an organization.
But I mean, it's just emotional intelligence, right? And that's why it all goes back to leadership because, one of the pillars of emotional intelligence is self-awareness around what's important to you and what gets certain emotional reactions out of you. Another one is social awareness, which is if you're in my team, what's important to you, what's going to make you feel more motivated, what's going to make you feel more stressed, all those sorts of things. So, so emotional intelligence can be varied in its level of presence within each individual, but there are tactics and strategies that you can give to someone who wouldn't naturally think to ask those questions. And it's like, here, take this piece of paper, sit down with your staff member, ask them the questions, write down the answers, and remember to bloody do it. It's. I mean, again, it's habit building.
So that's a good one though, because obviously sometimes you'll have the left brainers and the right brainers. Some people who are naturally emotionally intelligent, and potentially those that aren't, they have other skills. So, like you said, can you though, I guess, fake it? I mean, caring, or are those sort of leaders better off to bring someone else in to do the nice stuff? Do you reckon? I'm
No,
just, yeah,
I
no,
think for any leader with a lack of emotional intelligence or just a little bit of a deficit, let's be a little bit
deficit.
kinder. But if they've got a bit of a deficit in emotional intelligence, you got to help them build that muscle because they will hit a ceiling otherwise. When it comes to leadership, the technical side of things, like we always say, you manage things and you lead people, right? So the things are easy. They're processes, they're
Mm,
schedules, they are numbers, they're those sorts of tactical things. Um, the differentiator in a business is the leadership capability, and the leadership capability comes from emotional intelligence. And some people naturally have it to greater extents because they are very people focused and people inclined. Others need to be given strategies and some accountabilities around building those habits. But again, to be a great leader, you've got to have a really balanced um, toolkit of being able to manage things and lead people. And you're probably going to need support in developing one of them. Like that, nobody just becomes
mm.
perfect.
No, that's what I was going to say actually, because we do find, I've heard this a lot, like in our lunches, is that people are good doers, and then they just think, okay, well, they must be a good manager and leader, which is not the case. So how long do you think does it take to, I mean, I suppose everybody's different, but if you follow those steps to take someone from a doer to a good leader,
Okay,
is there
so
a time frame or?
Um, so making that jump from a doer to a leader, there's two considerations. There's skill and there's will. The skill, we can build the muscle, and honestly, you can give someone progress in literally like 6 months where, and you encourage them to be open. They sit down with their team and go, "We're going to do one-on-ones. I'm still developing this skill and I'm still figuring out how to have these conversations, but I want feedback from you." So at least if they're being open around the development, they're building the trust, which is the main thing. So that's the skill. The will is where we see this all the time, especially in really technical industries. Someone shows such great competence in their technical craft
Mm, mm,
that their reward for that is that they've been bestowed upon a team of human beings that are about to drive them nuts, and they start managing them, and they hate it. And it's that's again not an indictment on them. They're actually happier back on the tools.
mm.
So you will get that interesting dichotomy of someone who's done enough to be rewarded with it, and then go, nah, this sucks. I don't want it. So part of that development, or even getting someone to make the leap, is probably making sure that you're putting things in place to help them understand what they want. If they're going to understand going from doing the client work, doing the delivery, being in spreadsheets, to having one-on-ones, managing people's emotions, managing workflows, distributing tasks to people, all those sorts of things. You've actually got to give them as much insight into what that existence will be as you can, and do your best to scare them off, because some people go, no, I still think that could be fun. And then give them a shot, develop them
Yes. Yes, don't just throw them in and watch them sink or swim, which happens a lot, right?
all the time. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do you think then, because I know I've found in the past that bringing someone, like developing from within, I've always found has been a lot more successful, because then, they can do it your way and your values, and they're living it and breathing it, versus sort of pulling someone from outside. Is that sort of, what do you, is that the future? Like, is that what people should be focusing on right now, is like developing up? Or what? I mean, obviously it depends what they want to achieve, but is that sort of the better way to go with the lack of staff? Like, what are we going to do?
I think so. It's look, the fact is that in a perfect world, you would be coaching and training your entire team on emotional intelligence skills, right? So when we talk about leadership, leadership is a set of behavior that's not a position. You can be a positional leader where you've got authority and you've got a team, or you can be a personal leader who is, it might be the new grad, but they show those leadership tendencies of, I see a situation, I can make it better, I'm going to try and make a positive impact here. So a lot of those fundamental skills that you'd start building within an emerging leader, you should probably be having a crack at developing those skills within your team regardless, and then leaders will emerge. So, and we've seen this with a couple of organizations we work with who are really proactive, is that they run emerging leaders programs. They do a lot of the soft skill development stuff early career, and very quickly you see who those emerging potentials are. And if your business grows, you win a huge new contract, or you need to open a new department, you've often got a likely candidate for who is your next leader there. But so I would sort of say, if you're doing that development internally, regardless, you've kind of got nothing to lose, because you'll benefit from it either way. You'll either have your leader, or you'll have really great um, personal leaders who are still not managing people, but who are negotiating and communicating and collaborating and delegating sideways to people, and they will increase the productivity, as we are all attempting to do. So it's kind of like the same solution can have all these different benefits of it regardless. Yeah, ideally, hopefully you've got your next leader internally if you start early enough.
That's gold. So basically, are you saying that businesses should be investing in all of their people really from the beginning? And what size business, how many staff do you reckon they need to be before they start doing that?
There's probably no minimum, honestly, because I mean we work with businesses that are in the hundreds of staff, and we also work with some businesses that are like down around that 10 to 15, and they're often in professional services with like highly skilled, and it's hard to get good people, right? So even though they're small, actually like they're turning over good revenue, and they've got really talented people, and they're doing complex work. So losing one of those people is 10% of your workforce. So as I said before, generationally, there is a lot more focus and priority put upon that, the sort of like the career purpose and the direction that you're taking. So you've got to start discreetly satisfying those needs and those requirements very early on. I mean, the answer is, if you're looking to grow, you should be developing your staff. It doesn't really matter how big you are.
It sounds like a no-brainer. Look, we're almost at the end. So, what would you say then, Steve, is your message for businesses as we come into interesting times, what would the message be that what should all businesses be doing right now or going forward?
Look, I think it's generally the same basics we talked about as it is in the smoother waters, but it's probably just more important. So it's really that consistency and the messaging and clarity around what your business stands for, what you're trying to achieve, what you require from each role, how you're going to do the work. And this sounds so fluffy, but in times like we're in at the moment, where things are quite volatile, the more consistency and robustness that you can provide in a workplace, the better. Like if there's, we're all working in really volatile and dynamic environments. So there's lots of change happening, but the things that you can control, you should control. So don't expect that everyone is just going to be clear on their roles or their goals or how they do the work. Don't expect that they know how they should behave or, how they should live the values if you do have values on the wall. Just go hard and build the clarity because you are providing sort of that area of consistency in the world, just in that little pocket of your business, which will actually make it feel safer. And we talk a lot about psychological safety and trust within teams. Um, Again, you remove the frustration, remove whatever angst you can with a lot of that consistency. You will actually get a commercial benefit from it. It's not just you being Mother Teresa, your business will succeed.
That's such good advice. And so, if someone wanted to start this process, what would be that first step with you? I don't normally ask that question, but I think it's such a good answer that, yes, what would be the first step that they would take with you?
Honestly, the first step would be for me to buy them a coffee because I do like to be fairly bespoke in the first instance with anyone that might want to have a chat to us. But and because we're very big on like figuring out what you're trying to achieve and just like really carefully crafting what we provide to you. But the most common first step after we have that conversation is usually one of those sort of HR people and culture discovery processes where we can really marry up where you're trying to go, where you are, and what needs to happen in between to put you in the right direction. It's a pretty in-depth process, but it's you have a plan, and most businesses do not have a plan, so it's a start.
Magnificent. Look how quickly that time has gone. Thank you so much, Steve. There's been so many amazing pieces of gold in there. I really appreciate having you, and I'm sure everyone will be very grateful to listen in on all of your great information.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Steve. Bye for now.